The Bible is profitable for correction, it says, for those willing to accept it, for all who truly want to serve and please God. It also states, prove all things. Almost everyone accepts common practices without question, choosing to do what everyone else does because it is easy and fashionable. Most follow along as they have been taught, assuming what they believe and do is right. They take their beliefs for granted and never take time to prove them. Nowhere is this more true than in the observance of Easter, Christmas, New Year's, Halloween, and Valentine's Day, among other supposed Christian holidays. Billions keep these days without knowing why or where they originated. Most suppose they are found in the Bible, that God backs them because they see so many professing Christians observing them. What does history record about the origin of Easter? The vast majority of ecclesiastical and secular historians agree that the name of Easter and the traditions surrounding it are deeply rooted in pagan religion. Powerful quotes demonstrate the true origin of how the modern Easter celebration got its name. First is this admission. Since Bede the Venerable, the origin of the term for the feast of Christ's resurrection has been popularly considered to be from the Anglo-Saxon Easter, a goddess of spring. Also, the name comes from the Old High German plural for dawn, Ostern, whence has come the German Ostern and our English Easter. Now, a second quote. The fact that vernal festivals were general among pagan peoples no doubt had much to do with the form assumed by the Easter festival in the Christian churches. The English term Easter is of pagan origin. Now a third. The name Easter comes to us from Ostera or Easter, the Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring, for whom a spring festival was held annually. And it is from this pagan festival that some of our Easter customs have come. What about eggs? These have always been linked to the Easter celebration. Nearly every culture in today's world has a long tradition of coloring eggs. Notice this. The origin of the Easter egg is based on the fertility lore of the Indo-European races. The egg to them was a symbol of spring. In Christian times, the egg had bestowed upon it a religious interpretation, becoming a symbol of the rock tomb out of which Christ emerged to the new life of his resurrection. Think. The all-powerful Jesus Christ is reduced to being an egg just so people can hold to a pagan custom. Incredible. Let's see where the Easter bunny came from. In Germany and Austria, little nests containing eggs, pastry, and candy are placed in hidden spots, and the children believe that the Easter bunny laid the eggs and brought the candy. The Easter bunny had its origin in pre-Christian fertility lore. It has never had religious symbolism bestowed on its festive usage. There is nothing Christian about either of these symbols. The true history of what are fertility symbols, rabbits and eggs, are unknown to children who will believe whatever someone tells them. "Turn you yet again," Ezekiel writes, "and you shall see greater abominations that they do. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east. And they worshipped the sun toward the east. Then God said to me, Have you seen this? Is it a light thing, or is it no big deal that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have returned to provoke me to anger. Therefore will I also deal in fury. My eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity." Observing sunrise services is serious to God. He so hates this vile practice that he will ultimately destroy all who persist in what he calls abomination. What about hot cross buns? The prophet Jeremiah wrote this, "The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings to other gods, that they may provoke me to anger." These cakes were the same hot cross buns that millions of children sing about today. The famous historian Will Durant wrote, "Ishtar, pronounced Easter, interests us not only as analog of the Egyptian Isis and prototype of the Grecian Aphrodite and the Roman Venus, but as the formal beneficiary of one of the strangest of Babylonian customs, known to us chiefly from a famous page in Herodotus, which is, every native woman is obliged, once in her life, to sit in the temple of Venus, Easter, and have intercourse with some stranger." We now know Easter is the goddess Ashtaroth. Now we need to examine the Bible for what God thinks of her. Notice this. "And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtaroth." Again, Easter. The prophet Samuel warned Israel to put away the strange gods and Ashtaroth from among you, and prepare your hearts unto the Lord and serve Him only. Then the children of Israel did put away Baalim and Ashtaroth and served the Lord only. Later, Samuel reminded Israel of its history, that they would return to obey God only to fall back into idolatry time and again. We have seen that God never instructed, but rather actually commanded against Easter observance. What seems so innocent is not innocent at all. Much additional proof, biblical and historical, exists proving Easter is not permitted by God. Christmas. This worldwide tradition is thought to be a wonderful time focused on giving, family, beautiful music and decorations, special foods, and singing traditional carols. All this is supposedly centered around the worship of Jesus Christ and His birth on December 25th. But where did Christmas come from? What is the origin of Santa Claus, mistletoe, Christmas trees, holly wreaths, Yule logs, and exchanging gifts? There is no mistaking the source of the modern Christmas celebration. Nearly all aspects of it have their roots in Roman custom and religion. The Encyclopedia Americana reveals Christmas was not observed in the first centuries of the Christian church, since the Christian usage in general was to celebrate the death of remarkable persons rather than their birth. A feast was established in memory of this event, Christ's birth, in the 4th century. In the 5th century, the Western Church ordered the feast to be celebrated on the day of the Mithraic rites of the birth of the sun, and at the close of the Saturnalia, as no certain knowledge of the day of Christ's birth existed. Now the Encyclopedia Britannica under Christmas. In the Roman world, the Saturnalia, December 17th, was a time of merrymaking and exchanging of gifts. December 25th was also regarded as the birth date of the Iranian mystery god Mithra, the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness. On the Roman New Year, January 1st, houses were decorated with greenery and lights, and gifts were given to children and the poor. To these observances were added the German and Celtic Yule rites when the Teutonic tribes penetrated into Gaul, Britain, and Central Europe. Food and good fellowship, the Yule log and Yule cakes, greenery and fir trees, gifts and greetings, all commemorated different aspects of this festive season. Fires and lights, symbols of warmth and lasting life, have always been associated with the winter festival, both pagan and Christian, or supposedly Christian, I would add. These statements are plain. Most aspects of Christmas are not mentioned in the Bible. The reason is that they are not from God. They are not part of the way He wants people to worship Him. The Christmas tree, however, is mentioned in God's Word. We know what men think about it. Here is what God says. "Thus says the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven," or the stars, "for the heathen are dismayed at them." We might ask at this point, why do millions ignore this plain statement of God and read their horoscopes every day? Continuing, "For the customs of the people are vain. For one cuts a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree. This description is obvious. God directly refers to the Christmas tree as the way of the heathen. Just as directly, he commands, learn not the way of the heathen, calling these customs vain. What could be wrong with celebrating the start of the upcoming year? What's wrong with ringing out the old and ringing in the new? The truth is surprising. The Bible reveals God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. January 1st was restored as New Year's Day by the Gregorian calendar, AD 1582, immediately adopted by Roman Catholic countries. Other countries slowly followed suit. Scotland, 1660, Germany and Denmark, about 1700, England, 1752, Sweden, 1753, and Russia, 1918. Even today, however, nations cannot agree on this date. The Chinese New Year is celebrated officially for a month beginning in late January or early February, and the Muslim New Year falls on the first day of the month of Muharram and commemorates the date of the Hijrah, July 16th, 622, on the Gregorian calendar. Since the Muslim year is a lunar one consisting of only 354 days, the commencement of the new year fluctuates widely by the Western calendar. The God of the Bible said this to ancient Israel about the false gods they would encounter in the land he gave them. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, lest they make you sin against me. Their gods will surely be a snare unto you. This certainly pictures New Year's and other holidays we have seen. Nowhere does God in His Word command New Year's celebration. Then there is Halloween. Americans spend $4 to $5 billion every year on this second largest holiday besides Christmas. Is this just a harmless, happy childhood activity or something very different? Its traditions, customs, and practices are rooted in a past much darker, more sinister, and more demonic than you know. On the night of October 31st, the ancient Celts, after harvesting and storing their crops for the winter, began their annual fall festival. The Encyclopedia Britannica reveals Samhain, Celtic for end of summer, often pronounced Samhain, one of the most important and sinister calendar festivals of the Celtic year. At Samhain, held on November 1st, the world of the gods was believed to be made visible to mankind, and the gods played many tricks on their mortal worshippers. It was a time fraught with danger, charged with fear, and full of supernatural episodes. Sacrifices and propitiations of every kind were thought to be vital, for without them the Celts believed they could not prevail over the perils of the season or counteract the activities of the deities. Samhain was an important precursor to Halloween. The Celts observed the festival of Samhain in various forms. The Catholic Church took note. Throughout that church's early history, worshipers observed special anniversaries for martyrs who had been executed for their belief. Learn not the way of the heathen. But most people do not fear God. They do not care what He says, and He allows them to make their own decisions. Human beings are free moral agents, free to learn or not learn what God commands, free to obey or disobey Him. But woe to those who ignore the plain word of the Bible, believing men can overrule God. People can worship in ways that represent things far different from what they sincerely believe or intend. When they have observed a custom for a long time, they come to identify with it as though it were their own. Christmas, Easter, and Valentine's are all attempts to whitewash customs and observances of pagan gods and idols by Christianizing them, meaning pasting Christian-sounding names over them. Jesus warned, "In vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." And he added in Mark's account, full well, or knowing full well, you reject the commandment of God that you may keep your own tradition.